I'm Scott Strickland, Executive Vice President and CIO for Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. Wyndham Hotels and Resorts has 22 brands across the world. We offer a brand for anybody, regardless of income or regardless of where they're located in the world. For example, if we take a look at this slide, on the bottom left, you see Wyndham Grand, which is our most luxurious brand. Looking to the top right, you see Travelodge, which is our brand that's available for everyone, typically situated right outside national parks. During COVID, we continued to add brands as well. In fact, we added 2 new brands across the globe. One of the benefits we have of being in IT here at Wyndham Hotels and Resorts is that we are part of the business strategy. Brand quality and system growth here on the far left is critical in a franchise organization. Basically, we are asking franchisees to invest with us because our brands represent a quality brand and something that guests want to choose. In addition, we commit to continuing to grow that system over time. Meaning, if you buy into the La Quinta brand, for example, you know that 10 years from now, there will be more La Quinta hotels in the world there were than when you originally signed the contract. Secondly, when you buy into our franchisees, you're buying into our loyalty, sales, and marketing program. We have 93 million Wyndham Rewards loyalty members globally. And you're buying into the strength of that program. In fact, 1 in 2 of the folks that will stay at a hotel in our Wyndham system are loyalty members. In addition, you receive the marketing support of the world's largest franchisee-facing company. For example, we're based in 95 countries and have websites to support 12 different languages. We bring that marketing expertise to our franchisees. And then finally, and this is where we get excited in IT, we offer a set of technology solutions. When you join a Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, you receive some best-in-class technology at also best-in-class prices. You can see we've even branded ourselves a little bit here. We like to believe we put the personal touch in IT. That said, we recognized we needed to change. Some of those drivers for change are, historically, our company has been willing to invest in IT. On a year-on-year basis, we have maintained our capital investment. It's public information that we spend $40 to $50 million a year on capital related to IT type investments. We're willing to make those investments because ultimately we believe that technology is a differentiator for us in the marketplace. Secondly, we broke off as spin as a new entity. What's that mean in plainer English and not investment speak? It means that we spun out of Wyndham Corporate as Wyndham Hotels and Resorts in 2018. What that allowed us to do is really focus on our IT platforms and to say, okay, what do we need to run as a lean, mean hotel organization? That even gave us more investment than we had in prior years so that we could move our technology platforms to the next generation. Thirdly, we have a history of ongoing organic growth. We open 2 hotels a day, almost every day across the world. That's 750 hotels a year, brand new that come in. So organically, we continue to grow by 750 hotels a year, which means we have to continue that investment and be on our toes. Fourthly, we're acquisitive. You think of Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, we're 22 brands. As I said, we opened and established 2 new brands during COVID, but traditionally we purchase a new brand about every 18 months or so. So it's been 2 years since we've had acquisitions, so most people say we're due for one. And then finally, like everyone else, we have constant cost pressures. That means that we don't get to rest on our laurels. We have to look for where can we re-platform technology? How can we set up our total platform so that it's elastic based on business needs? What that meant for us ultimately is that we needed to choose single platforms across the enterprise. Easier said than done. But the first thing we did is we looked at what are some of the best-in-class platforms out there that we can standardize on. And by doing that, by moving out to these SaaS platforms, we removed a lot of our infrastructure that existed in some of our owned data centers. So the first platform that we standardized on was our digital platform. So our worldwide websites and the entire stack that supports them. We chose a single vendor on that, and we executed a 2-year migration and established it. We then established a common central reservation system. In fact, we're one of the only brands in the hotel industry that has every one of our hotels on a single central reservation. In fact, that central reservation system is also cloud-based, so we don't have to maintain the infrastructure for it either. We looked at property management systems. At one point, we were running 24 property management systems worldwide. That makes it hard to standardize. Makes it even harder when a lot of those servers are sitting under people's desks in the hotels. So we chose 2 cloud-based systems that over 95% of our hotels globally can move to. We still have some exceptions based on some local conditions, but with 95% of our estate migrating to these 2 areas, it makes the ability to support it and to innovate that much easier. Those servers that were under the desk in hotels are largely gone. And then finally, we chose a single cloud infrastructure provider. We chose Amazon Web Services for this and looked at how we could migrate out of our physical data centers and ultimately out of our co-location facilities to get there. We believe that choosing one provider as opposed to 2 made it easier for our internal resources to support it. It also made it easier for us to frankly keep up with all the innovation that comes out from cloud providers. So for example, if we had chosen 2 cloud providers, we would have to know what's coming out for both of those providers. We'd have to attend 2 conferences. We'd have to train a lot of our resources on 2 different platforms. So we chose a single vendor in AWS and have been partnering with them since then. What's the benefit of some of these single platforms? So I spoke a little bit earlier to the fact that we're on a single central reservation system and a single digital platform. If you look at our typical competitor, and we'll just pick one that maybe has 2 of those. So they have 2 digital platforms, 2 website platforms, and 2 central reservation systems. Ultimately, you can see that results in 12 different interface points amongst those systems, which means anytime you need to introduce a new piece of functionality, you have to test it across 12 different interface points. It also means that you need to maintain that functionality across 12 different interface points. In our case, 1 digital platform, 1 central reservation system. We have to maintain that functionality across 2 points. Obviously, it's a lot cheaper to maintain in that case, and more importantly, as we come out of the pandemic and want to satisfy our guests and franchisees, it's a lot easier to innovate because as we bring this new functionality to market, we can do so much quicker than many of our competitors who have to integrate it across 12 different points. So what was our approach to moving to the cloud? First, we wanted to exit our physical data centers. And as I spoke to a little, we wanted to standardize wherever possible on SaaS-based platforms. So if we start in the middle there, we chose a single central reservation system and migrated 5 different reservation systems, 4 of which we were running ourselves, out into this cloud. We chose a single provider in AWS and started with the migration of our enterprise data warehouse. And then we took a lot of the rest of our rack and stack type systems and moved them out into a MOLO, which is a term we phrased and coined, which means a managed location provider. What's that mean in plainer English? Once again, that's somebody who we gave the keys to and we said, here's our infrastructure, you run it for us. Basically, here's our mess, you run it for us for less. What this allowed us to do is focus more on the business. We started to be able to have some conversations with the business about where do we want to go and not about why IT was going to be a constraint. It also allowed us to reallocate a large number of our IT resources. We inverted the classic pyramid. So that pyramid where you have database administrators, system administrators, network administrators at the bottom, and then you gradually work up to business analysts, we flipped it around. We said, we need more business analysts. We need more business partners out there and fewer people focused on the pure technology. And finally, and our CFO loved this, it drove a 45% cost reduction for us. 45%. of our year-on-year spend was reduced as soon as we made this migration. Second up for us was, how do we migrate from that colo? Remember, we were calling it a MOLO, where they were managing our infrastructure. How do we migrate from that colo MOLO location out into AWS? So there's a couple different options that we looked at there. First, well, we could re-platform the workloads, because when we moved out into AWS, we didn't want to just do a lift and shift. We didn't want to just take something that was running on a VM and now run it on an EC2 instance. We said, no, let's re-platform it. Let's take advantage of some of those native function points and some of those native capabilities that are out there. We also looked at migrating and upgrading applications across the board. So if it was possible, we wanted to move to things that, again, were more cloud native or that were offered in a SaaS variety. Why host it? Why even host it in AWS if it's possible to be hosted in a pure SaaS environment? But if you are going to host it in AWS, then upgrade to the version of the application that supports that and allows it. Re-architect. We looked at re-architecting the entire platform as we moved. Again, rather than just performing that lift and shift. If you think of this as a triangle, where on one axis of the triangle, you just have transition on that bottom, but on the other axis, you have transform. When we moved across into our MOLO and colo, we were just transitioning. When we went up to AWS, we were moving along the hypotenuse of that triangle and we were transforming. Another key tenet of our approach was to migrate by business function. Ultimately, this made it easier for us to scope out what we wanted to do, and it made it easier for us to integrate and communicate with our stakeholders. So take, for example, the digital side, which I've referred to. We could work with the digital team, work with the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, work with the VP of Marketing, work with the folks over on the customer relationship management side and say, we're going to be focused together on the next 18 months or so on migrating this out. And there may be some bumps on the road, but we're going to limit those bumps to that one functional area. We're also going to come out of this with a joint story to tell on why this is better. So we started with digital. And if you look on the far right, you can see in 2020, at the end of 2020, we were 60% transformed across all of our different stacks, but we were 100% transformed to digital. We were 80% transformed in data because we recognized that transferring data across all of these platforms was absolutely critical and was something that the cloud does very, very well. As I indicated, it was one of the first places where we migrated over into AWS, and it allowed us to elastically adjust our demand, our capacity, and scale up and down as business conditions mandated. In fact, let's pause there for a second. Everyone remembers what happened during COVID. The bottom basically fell out of the hotel market. At that point, our spend reduced dramatically on our infrastructure because we had migrated our central reservation system, our property management system, and our data transfers all into the cloud. So if we were receiving 1/5 of the reservations we were receiving before, we were paying 1/5 of what we were paying before. Whereas many of our competitors were not able to scale down during COVID, we were. Equally, as we come out of the pandemic and we look forward, we're able to scale up. We have the capacity. We can add servers, virtual as they may be. We can add pathways. We can add more Lambda instances and just scale up as needed. We look over to the right. I've spoken a little bit to the central reservation and the property management, and you can see, oh, we weren't touching call center or integration yet. One of the other benefits of migrating to this platform is it enabled us suddenly to implement a whole new generation of applications. Take, for example, our property management system. As we migrated from these on-premise property management systems to true cloud-based systems, we were enabling new functionality. So we were reducing costs, we were enabling new functionality for our franchisees, and ultimately we were enabling new functionality for our guests. Some of the key things we were able to do for our franchisees is we gave them a property management system that was fully mobile. They could access it from anywhere. So if they were managing 2 hotels, they can look at their property management system. They can see who's due to check in and check out on a given day while they're driving in their car if they have to. It's easy to use. And something we've seen with turnover at some of our front desks is that people may not have time to take the training, and they just need to be able to check somebody in and out. And with these new cloud-based systems and next-gen systems, it's pretty intuitive. You can look on there and there's a green button for check in and check out. It integrates with kiosks and a lot of third-party applications that are out there. And as we know, kiosks are the next big thing for everybody. At Wyndham, though, we still believe that the best kiosk is the one that our guests are carrying in their pocket and allow them to check themselves in and out. And then finally, as I indicated, these things are easier to maintain and they're completely cloud-based. So coming back, let's take a look at what we did in 2021. In 2021, we really focused on the data side and turned that green, completed the migration of the massive amounts of data. So remember, we have 93 million loyalty members, and we're transferring a lot of that data back and forth on a daily basis. We have 9,000 hotels, and at 50% occupancy, roughly on those 9,000 hotels, and generally we run a lot higher than that, you're at 500,000 people checking in and out every day. And you're moving 500,000 records at a minimum every day across the enterprise. We focus on the franchisee. We said, okay, what can we do for the franchise and the franchisee here? One of the first things we looked at there was we can provide them a cloud-based system as well. We implemented Salesforce.com and supplied the data behind Salesforce to make them understand what's going on in their hotel on a daily basis. We also migrated a lot of our integration mechanisms. So instead of running things that used to be based in our data center, we leveraged new services available from AWS, such as Glue, such as Lambda, such as Kinesis. And we started to look at some of what's going on in our call center, and more on that in a moment. But we ended 2021 at 83% transformed. And I'd really like to pull out here one of the great use cases we had. When we went into this migration, we weren't necessarily expecting some of our vendors to be on AWS as well. But we found, as we went through it, that 2 of our primary vendors are. One of them is our revenue management system. This is the system that allows our franchisees to set their rates for the day. How much should they charge? The other that's on it is our customer data platform. So both of these vendors are on AWS, and the benefit of having them on AWS and us being on AWS is that, hey, we know how to integrate. We know that we're going to integrate using these services, for example, within AWS. We have a common vocabulary. When we refer to something, we can say S3, for example, we can refer to Glue, we can say Lambda, they get it. We all are speaking the same language and we don't have to pause and restart. We can also manage our infrastructure from a mobile standpoint. We've set it up so that we can all receive alerts when there's capacity concerns, when there is a random failure, or when something is going on in the environment that we need to be aware of. So it's been a great side benefit for us as we went through this, that again, 2 of our primary vendors are also in AWS, and it's accelerated our transformation. Now, finally, let's look ahead to 2022. At the end of 2022, we will be 98% transformed. And in this case, for us, what that really is focusing on is our call center and our finance functions. So on the call center side, it means moving into a voice over IP phone system, getting out of those on-prem ones, and again, leveraging a lot of that native AWS functionality. On the finance side, it means taking some of those old applications, your old ERP, AR, accounts receivable, accounts payable applications, and moving them out to the cloud. Because believe it or not, those vendors are finally ready for it. One of the best benefits of this ultimately is that migrating all these platforms enabled us to save a lot of money. So as I mentioned, yes, you can vary up and down in terms of your spend based on capacity and based on needs. But as you go through this, it forces you to decommission licenses. It forces you to say, what licenses am I using that I do not need in this new environment, and to run that count. It also allows you to rationalize a whole lot of applications. Remember, we were running 5 central reservation systems. We're now to 1. We're paying a lot less because we're able to go all in on 1 or 2 vendors there and negotiate for improved spending. Moore's Law, something that completely rules everything that's going on in IT, continues to apply here. What we pay for our instances decreases on a year-on-year basis. The capacity that we're able to get for $1 increases on a year-on-year basis. So that always works in our favor. And if you're locked into old infrastructure, then you have to continually migrate to achieve that savings. If you're in the cloud, you get that for free or automatically every year. And then finally, it allowed us to establish a governance structure. Quite often you'll hear people talk about, oh, if you move to the cloud, then your developers can go crazy. They can get out there and they can set up instances on their own and they'll start spending and you won't even know what's going on. And then pretty soon you'll double what you thought you were spending. Sure, all that's possible if you don't have some sort of governance structure. We like to call it a trust but verify, where we trust our developers, we trust our development leads and our managers to go out there and to set those up as needed. But we also verify on a periodic basis about every 2 weeks. And we set up alerts and ways to monitor to ensure that we're effectively using our environment. Finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out this is not just a technology win. Ultimately, the real customers here are our franchisees and our guests. This is a picture of a couple projects that we took live, one of them with our revenue management vendor, where we integrated via AWS, but where we took live, where we were able to change the way our franchisees did business, the way they were able to price their hotel rooms. They went from being able to price their hotel rooms on a once-a-day basis to 5 times a day. They're now able also to look at what their competitors are doing and to make those adjustments whenever they need to. You can see some happy faces, or at least imagine some happy faces behind those masks there. So let's pivot a little bit and talk a little bit more about now how we're using cloud to innovate. So we've done the hard work. We've migrated all of these platforms across, but now how can we use the cloud to ultimately innovate for ourselves and for our franchisees? So something we do at Wyndham, because we are a franchisor, which means we offer the brand, we offer the technology, but we don't mandate that our franchisees necessarily use every component there. So something we do is we put products on a shelf. We say, for example, here's a texting platform that you can use if you choose to. And the benefit of choosing texting platform A or texting platform B is that we've proven that it integrates. We already have it set up to communicate, for example, with your property management system. We also have looked across the marketplace and we've said, we believe texting platform A and texting platform B are the best ones out there. So we're going to invest in both. And we can guarantee to a degree that their functionality is going to be solid. We've also set them up so they're already running at some Wyndham hotels. So you're not going to be the first person in the environment for this. So again, going back to that integration and some of the specific use cases, we can say, hey, here's how this hotel, for example, in Puerto Rico is using texting to better communicate with their guests. Here's how they're using texting to alert a guest when their room is available, or to offer them late checkout or early check-in. Have you thought about using some of those use cases? And then finally, and this is really important for our franchisees, we have pre-negotiated pricing based on the Wyndham volume. Us being able to sit down with a vendor and say, we can bring up to 9,000 hotels onto your platform allows us as Wyndham to get much better pricing on some of these solutions than our franchisees would be able to get on a one-on-one basis. So we're ultimately really excited about being able to offer these products, put them on the shelf, and allow our franchisees to choose the ones that are right for them. One of the key benefits here is that when we need to innovate, we can do so really quickly because going back to those single platforms, we implement once and solve for many. So an example of that is contactless payments. We were able to implement contactless payments over the course of 60 days. 5,000 hotels in North America were enabled on contactless payments. What's the benefit of that? Well, it's actually faster to check in and check out by just tapping your phone or tapping your credit card there than it is to fumble with the card and determine which which side it needs to go into. Am I swiping? Am I dipping my chip? Am I waiting for it to beep? What's going on? Instead, just get out your phone, get out your card, and just tap it. It's also something that people have come to expect. Our guests during the pandemic learned all about contactless payment. I like to joke that even my mom can pay with her mobile phone now, and before she couldn't. And so when they're checking out of their hotel room, why wouldn't they be able to pay with their phone? They expect it. And then there's something within our industry called chargebacks, which is basically fraud. And using contactless payments is considered the same as having a card present transaction or dipping that chip for our franchisees. So it makes our guests happy, it reduces fraud, it meets expectations, and we are able to roll it out in 60 days, all because we are on standard cloud-based platforms. So something that we're piloting right now is mobile tipping, another cloud-based platform for us. What we found is that the majority of millennials certainly don't carry cash. So how do we reward one of the hardest working groups in the hotel business? Well, you allow them to pay in a way that doesn't use cash. We've also, through some of the pilots, have proven that people tip more if they don't tip with cash. So we're piloting a solution that basically allows folks to scan the QR code, tip using their preferred payment method, whether that's Google, Apple, Venmo, or heck, even if they want to enter an old-fashioned credit card, they can do that as well. And then route that tip to the appropriate housekeeper. This improves retention in a tough labor market and ultimately can increase the hourly wage for that housekeeper. Other benefits for us as we think about mobile tipping is, yes, not only can they make more, but we get to compete with the folks across the street. In the past, the housekeepers were kind of a closed industry. And what we're finding now is with wages going up across the board, housekeepers can also consider working in fast food. They consider working at a warehouse, consider working at a drive-through. And so we need to provide a higher total comp package. We've also received a lot of positive feedback from the guests. The guests are like, finally, what a great way for this. I don't travel with cash, and I want to recognize Maria, who did a great job for me. Or I want to recognize Fred, who came in here and went the extra mile and brought us a pillow. So let's close with what's next. Where are we going from here? We've built out these platforms. We've done the heavy lifting. We're starting to innovate. What do we do now? So from an internal organization standpoint, we're going to continue to look at our methodologies and adjust them. We found, you hear this a lot, okay, go to agile, go to continuous improvement and continuous deployment. Sure, but don't do that until your organization is ready and your infrastructure is ready. And we're there. So we're running agile right now in our digital stack. We're running agile on our data stack, and we're continuing to grow and improve our overall methodologies. We're also talking to our vendors, and we're saying, how can we expand your suites? We've made these investments in your platforms. Now let's go horizontally. The fewer vendors that we can have in our ecosystem, ultimately, the better off we are, because we believe they pre-built a lot of that integration, and it's less vendor management for us. We always need to listen to all three of our customer groups. Here at Wyndham IT, we serve the team member, the internal Wyndham employee, the franchisee, and the guest. And by listening to them and some of their needs, we can understand what we need to do next. A great example for this is, hey, can I receive housekeeping on days where maybe it's not scheduled? Right now, housekeeping is scheduled every 3 days. Should we offer the ability for people to request housekeeping and possibly upcharge for that? Maybe we should put that on our roadmap. It also allows us to partner with a lot of our vendors. So for example, now that we've collected all of this data for the first time, we're going to be able to run AI. And we put this data into native AWS. So we'll be able to run some of AWS's tools on the data and ask it questions and receive answers that we've never received before. And then finally, it allows us to support any future acquisitions or new brands. Earlier, I spoke about us being at 22 brands. We've actually just announced a 23rd that will go live in 2023. You see a picture of it there at the bottom. It's Project Echo. We don't have a name for the brand yet, but it's our economy extended stay. And because we're cloud-based, we know we're going to be able to scale and put our platforms into this hotel just like we have all others. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you found some value in the Wyndham story.